Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Over to you, Spurti.
Thanks, Rajesh. So I did not prepare any slides. I'll be talking using my notes. So a disclaimer, everything that I'll be talking today is borrowed heavily from Swami P and Swami SPG. Hope that is okay. Um, so firstly, I think for me, chapter 7, as they see it, it's the foundation for the Shataka, which talks about uh, Tat Padartha. So I think chapter 7 sets a nice stage for that. And then the whole chapter is about Gnana Vijnana Yoga, and there has been a lot of discussion in the group about Gnana Vijnana Yoga. And I just would like to talk about a few definitions that Swami SPG gave in his lecture, which I found very profound and interesting. So he says, like according to the traditional interpretations by Shankara and Sridhar Swami, Gnana is basically reading about the scriptures, and Vijnana is realizing the ultimate truth that I am Brahman. But according to Sri Ramakrishna actually gives a more profound meaning. He says that Gnana itself is realizing that I am Brahman, and Vijnana is realizing that every bit around me is Brahman, everything is Brahman. So he tries to explain this with a very nice example. So Gnana is seeing milk, actually, reading about milk, seeing milk, and drinking that milk. And Vijnana is doing all this, but the milk also kind of satiates your thirst, and it also nourishes you. So Vijnana is becoming intimate with this Brahman. So that's how Sri Ramakrishna has given this interpretation. He also gives a third interpretation by Madhusudan Saraswati, I think from Gudhartha Deepika. So according to this, Vijnana is realizing that the entire reality is Sat, it is very pure, and everything in this reality is actually just imaginary, Kalpita. So after you realize that, there is nothing else that one has to realize. So I found these interpretations very nice. I especially like the interpretation from Sri Ramakrishna. Um, and the second thing that that I found like very nice was this comes from Swami P actually. So he talks about two prakritis, para and apara prakriti, and how apara is the cause of all suffering. He tells that both of these can't be created; they are already like eternal in nature. And Brahman itself, he manifests as the universe. So he gives a very nice he puts it very nicely. He says, to see any avatar of the god, you need to do a lot of tapas, but world or the universe is the only avatar that is available for everyone to see without doing any tapas. So that's the Vishwarupa avatar, God himself manifesting as the universe, which which I found very beautiful. And he also goes on to explain that bhakti is the remedy for all the sufferings to come out of all the suffering. And so he brings in a nice point here. I think this is a point of contemplation for many beginners, especially. I think all the beginners have this question: which path should I follow to get salvation, to get moksha, right? And like there are so many paths out there. And he says in the second chapter and in the fourth chapter, we say that Krishna says that Gnana is the ultimate remedy for everything. And now here Krishna is claiming that Bhakti is the remedy. Like, why is there no Samanvaya in these teachings? And then he puts it he explains it very beautifully again. He says, Bhakti is not just one sadhana, it is a series of sadhanas, and everything like Bhakti will itself culminate as Gnana Rupa Bhakti, and that is the remedy. That is the remedy for samsara, which again I found very profound, very beautiful. And another thing was about the three bhaktas who worship God, right? I think like the way Krishna puts it, right? Even to just lean into God, even to just become a bhakta, I think people like we should have acquired some amount of good karma, that then only like that the any kind of bhakti is possible. But then there are I think there is I found this like nice interpretation by SPG in his lectures. I think Alpana also mentioned it, like there is the traditional interpretation of Artha, Jignasu, Artharthi, and Gnani. And then there is this interpretation from Bhagavatam, which basically which says that I'll just talk about the Bhagavatam interpretation again. I found this very nice. So the gopis are they are in intense sorrow because he puts it as they are feeling the presence of absence of God. So they are in viraha. And they are in tears. So this is the artha phase, and then they become jignasu. They become seekers. They go on inquiring. They go and ask trees. They go and ask the river Yamuna. They go and ask all the saints, and they go and ask like all the trees, everyone basically. So that is the jignasu phase, and the third phase is the artharthi phase, where they just sit down, meditate, and try to feel the presence of God, try to feel the presence of Krishna. And the fourth phase is the Gnani phase, where through their bhakti, they have the vision of God, they become one with God, they become enlightened. I found this beautiful, and I think even this has been there has been some amount of discussion around this because of the ordering, like whether Artharthi should come before Jignasu, like what the ordering should be of the four bhaktas. This again I found very, very nice. And the last thing that I think I would like to end by saying is just like talk about like Sakama Bhakti and Nishkama Bhakti. Again, like I think this has been a question which has been raised in the group. What should we be praying for? Should we just pray for our spiritual progress, or is it okay for us to pray for for our health, wealth, good relationships, and all that? And I think the way Swami P puts it is very nice. It is completely okay. It's absolutely okay to start with Sakama Bhakti. Without Sakama Bhakti, you can't proceed to Nishkama Bhakti. And I think the exact like lines he uses is Nishkama Bhakti is impossible without Sakama Bhakti, and Sakama Bhakti is incomplete without Nishkama Bhakti. This was very profound. And if my biggest takeaway I think from this chapter is just surrendering to God, having that bhakti in him, doing full surrender, and that will show us the way, that will lead the path. Yeah, that's my takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Spurti?
Very nice, Purti. It's a complete summary of Swami P. I think very nicely articulated also. In fact, I was just, when you were saying this, I was just thinking, there is a Prashnottana Ratnamalya of Adi Shankaracharya where, there is a question that is asked. It's a very short, brief question and a brief answer. So he says, Maya Kim? Okay, what is Maya? And his answer is in just 2 words, Kalpitam Dvaitam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just a very simple explanation for Maya. So I just thought I will just add to that, I think nice. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Spurti. It was very articulate.
Thank you.
Thank you for also correlating with Madhusudan Saraswati, Ramakrishna, SPG, Swami P. You got like 5 different
Yeah, very
interpretations of
nice.
Jnana and Vijnana. That was very well done.
Yeah, I didn't finish all Swami SPG's lectures, but like whatever I finished, I just tried to pick out nice things that I found from his lectures. Yeah, thought I would present you.
Awesome. Ashish, over to you.
Okay, let me share my screen.
Rest of all, please mute yourself.
Yeah, let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go in presentation mode. Okay, so this is kind of a safe harbor statement, and Hari Om, everyone. This is actually some notes I was trying to make it clear for myself. So I think I am not qualified to speak about all that has been covered in chapter 7. Reason one, it is for the first time the chapter starts itself with Sri Bhagwan Uvacha. So it is his words. And secondly, as this is the beginning of the Tat Pradhan sadhana. I think it is an attempt to understand all this through intellect, which I believe ultimately is only an attempt. It doesn't happen without the grace of the Lord. And it is some other kind of intellect which is provided by the God himself. So it is just trying to understand things, putting them in words.
But Ashish, you are more than qualified because you are it itself.
Yeah, that
We
is
are we all
another perspective, Raj. So moving on, I'll try to do it in 10 minutes so that we have enough time for the main session today. So I thought I'll just go back and try to understand what we had done so far from chapter 1, Vishad Yoga, to chapter 6, which was Atma Sanyam Yoga. So all that was Tvam focused sadhana, which was basically working on our body and mind and preparing it for what is coming next, which is beginning with chapter 7, the next sections, chapter 7 to chapter 12. And the key thing which I could get was that we have to make a start from where we are, and we all are at different stages, and so is everyone around us. These were sort of 3 stages which I think got covered from chapter 1 to chapter 6, starting with a deluded mind and then moving to the next stage, which comes by doing a lot of action, trying to indulge with this material universe. And still the mind is impure. And then we come to Karma Yoga, trying to purify the mind, and then we try to focus it so that from purified, it is still scattered, So we are trying to focus on something coming to chapter 6, which is Dhyan Yoga. And with a focused mind, we are ready for the next thing which is coming, which is the Tat focused sadhana. Moving on, chapter 6, some parting shots, as Arjun had some doubts and he was provided some answers. And this is setting the stage for chapter 7. So Arjun talked about difficulties to focus, kind of monkey mind, and going back again to being led by sense organs, and which are difficult. The mind is difficult to control. It leads the sense organs to wander. So on that, Bhagavan says that it can be, if you are constantly doing practice, abhyasa, shravan mananan nididhyasana, and with this passion, that's the formula to get over it. And then in the footnote, there are some other ways you can go through it. I'll not go through the details. And then the other doubt he had was what happens, like when someone is not able to continue and leaves it midway, the goal is not achieved. Is it all lost for them? And from 39 of chapter 6 to 45, Bhagavan is saying that nothing goes in vain. We all keep coming back to play this game, and whatever progress is made in this life, that continues till we are where we want to be or where we are supposed to be. And in the end, yeah, that's the beginning of chapter 7, that those yogis who have full faith in me, they are kind of supposed to reach me ultimately. Chapter 7, yeah, I have tried to focus more on 7.1 till 7.7. And after that, it is just, I think, justification statements to what has been told. And it is Gyan Vigyan Yoga, Tat Focus Sadhana. In 7.1, Bhagwan is saying that basically the one who has gained all the qualifications by following what has been told in the earlier chapters will be able to understand what I am going to tell. So one who is focused and attached in me, Maya Asakt Mana, who has purified their mind via Karma Yoga and focused it onto me via Dhyan Yoga, Yogam Yunjan, who have come to my refuge and surrendered to me, Madashraya. So here again, yeah, I have put asterisk. God realization is not achieved by force or by one's own abilities. It happens in its own time by the grace of God. So that is most important. And I think that's the underlying philosophy which is being explained in this chapter. And the next one is who is without any doubt has faith in me, knows me based on the sadhana which has been done in the first 1 to 6 chapters. And then he says that just listen to me. You listen to what I am trying to say, tat shruno, and all the doubts will be dispelled. 7.2 is the crux of this, like what I am going to tell. Bhagavan is saying, I'll tell you about Jnana and Vijnana, and here whatever I could get about Jnana and Vijnana from different aspects. So literally it is knowledge and science. From a bhakti perspective, Jnana is theoretical knowledge acquired from scriptures, also called Paroksh Jnana. Vijnana is practical application in one's own life. Try to give an example. We were reading a lot about 2 KLM 3, being root of all evil, and working practically to eradicate these from our life would be Vijnana from that perspective. From a Advaita perspective, Jnana is knowledge about self. Vijnana is knowledge about or everything else which is typically not identified with self in the beginning. When we start with the beginning stage of Jnana, anything outside of what we identify as us, and it is an expansion actually. The second stage is we identify all that Vistara also as expansion of ourselves. And there is an example there, you can read through it. And in the end, God says that I take the responsibility of telling you in a way that you will definitely understand. So that responsibility is also taken by the Lord. That is one meaning of Vakshyami. The straightforward meaning is that I am going to tell you, but the more deeper meaning is that he's actually taking the responsibility to tell it in a way that if you listen to him, you'll understand. And this is something knowing which nothing else need to be known. Yajnatva neho bhutaha. So that is 7.2. Moving on. Yeah, 7.3 is also in the same thought process. It is talking about who all get interested on this path. There are thousands who develop an interest and make an effort, and that happens by my grace only. And out of those thousands, also probably only one will actually come to truly know me as the self, which is Tattvata. And I have talked about these three stages. You can go through it. I think there is no need for me to read through this. And this is the actual Jnana and Vijnana 7.4 to 7.7. 7.4 is talking about Apara Prakriti, which is Jada. And he talks about 8 material components which make this Apara Prakriti or Jagat. And we can do a lot of study about the Panch Mahabhutas and all, how it comes into being. And I think probably Srimad Bhagavad talks about all this in a lot more detail. But the key here, which I took from Swami Anubhavananda, is that the key is something which most of us miss, because we might be getting interested in Panch Mahabhutas and how it all came about. So there is a key word here, ityam me, like it is mine. And Swamiji actually is telling us to focus on that it is all Lord's, so it is not ours. So he's giving us a cue that it is mine. So do not remain attached in all this. So it's kind of a beginning of vairagya and niti, that this is not ours. 7.5 is about the Jiv Bhuta Prakriti, which is Chetan, ever powerful, but it gets deluded of its true nature and starts indulging in karma to seek pleasure and completeness from this jagat. So dharyate jagat. So Jiv Bhuta Mahabhav, it is actually in true essence, it is the true nature is equivalent to Brahman, but it gets deluded. 7.6 talks about Ishvara as the transcendental and immanent cause of everything. and it's the creator, the destroyer, and the sustainer. 7.7, something that I would like to emphasize on is obviously the example of Sutrae Iv Maniganai. So there is an example of flower being held by a thread, which is a sustainer and a sustained example, that thread being the sustainer and flowers are something which are sustained. And this is an example which, if we think about Ishvara, the way Ishvara is keeping the Jagat and Jeev together and everything running. But there could be another example here, which is the gold bead holding the gold thread holding the gold beads. And that is an example to explain Brahman, where everything is gold, the substratum is gold, and that is the sustainer as well as the sustained. So thread is also gold, and the beads which are being held by that thread are also gold. And ultimately, the crux of this is making a progression from Dehe Bhav to Jiva Bhav. So to understand 7.5, and then to Sakshi Chaitanya Bhav, and finally to Sakshi Swarup, which is 7.7. And there are a lot of metaphors to explain this. There is a water, ocean, and waves metaphor. There is the pot and the clay metaphor, but this was something different. And this talks about an all-day international. It's not a one-day international. And there are two sides. The Jagat side is always bowling and fielding side, and the Jiva side is always the batsman, and Ishvara is the umpire or the Karma Dhaksha. And this is going on till Sansar goes on, this game goes on. And Brahmana, it's the substratum of everything, but indifferent to the game. It's not involved in the game. So I thought this would be interesting to share. And I think the crux of the chapter is already explained, and then I've tried to quickly cover from 7.8 to 7.30, which talks about like God is talking about see me in these 15 special things, like rasa in water, light in sun and moon, and all those things. And then he talks about the three gunas and the maya, which make the jiva deluded. Then why people don't have faith in me, the kinds of people who don't have faith in me, and the other kind, four kind, which have faith in me and then pray to me. And then again he gets into that this maya is mine. And then finally those who take refuge in me, even in old age, they get liberation from old age as well as death. And if anyone takes faith in refuge in me, even at the time of death, they will be taken care of. And so let's move on. And this is the crux of what I thought is the Tat focused sadhana. The end goal here is equating Tat and Tvam. And for that, the Jiva has to take refuge initially in Ishvara, in Sagun Brahmana, and through bhakti, prayer, or other means, has to get away from that identification with mind, body, and ego, and has to reach the ultimate stage which is nothing else exists, but there is Brahman and Jiva, which are one and the same thing, and that's the completeness. I think that's it. Thank you for listening to me.
Beautiful. I love the cricketing
So much.
analogy.
Yeah, that was very nicely put.
Very nice, Ashish.
It's
Thank you.
the game never ends. Lovely.
Any questions for Ashish?
Yes. Srini here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not a question for Ashish, but I have this lingering doubt for quite some time. When you take the Western philosophy, they talk something about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. For example, in one of the books of Deepak Chopra, he says, when you try to approach the subconscious mind for something, it could be anything what you want, the world will conspire to get it done for you. So in the context of Bhagavad Gita, what exactly is the subconscious mind? I mean, it is all on mind, intellect. So I thought if somebody can clarify this doubt, it would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
Anyone wants to take a shot?
This is Muku. So my understanding I think the subconscious is more of a Western construct. I don't think the Upanishads or scriptures have that construct. That's my understanding.
I felt the same thing too. So I was just trying to relate. If something is there in the Eastern philosophy also, then there could be some relation between the conscious and the subconscious mind. So anybody can clarify on this also would be helpful.
Yeah, just to add to what Muku is saying, I think the way in if you look at the Gita, the book that we're following, right? In the introductory chapters, it talks about a framework where it says that how a human mind is constructed, and basically it divides it into mano, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, and that's what it is. So the emotional, the intellectual, the memory, and the ego. Ego as in the one that appropriates the mind-body construct. So that's how the Indian philosophy describes it. So this conscious mind, subconscious mind, or even if you take the Freudian analogy of id and super id, I don't remember now. I used to read that a lot. All that is, trying to explain certain phenomena, which is probably incomplete. Okay, because
Yes.
even if you say conscious plus unconscious, conscious plus subconscious, basically what it's saying is it's still telling only that part of the mind which you can observe by yourself, and something that you cannot observe for yourself. That doesn't kind of complete the picture, saying that okay, if you have emotions and if you have intellect, you can observe both of them, but then ego, it's a new construct completely, and the way that Western philosophies describe ego is totally different from the way that Eastern philosophy describes. So I would go with what Muku is saying, rather than equate both of them or try to find correlations. Just park one thing and then take up the other, and vice versa.
Understand. Yes. So there is no concept of subconscious mind in the Eastern philosophy at all. Let go Bhagavad Gita. No.
The closest that I could think of the subconscious mind, if I were to make a extrapolation and say it is desires or vasanas, that's what I would say. But I don't think that I'm right.
Understand.
Yeah, let me take a shot. Let me take a shot here. Okay.
Go ahead, Mahesh.
Normally, mind is not at all subconscious. I mean, subconscious is a word which is not appropriate for especially mind. I mean, consciousness is one part. If we take, let's use the word awareness. Mind is more of aware or conscious. I'm using these two words so that people don't get confused. Mind is always aware. Okay, the subconscious mind is typically like, for example, in the night, if you want to sleep and get up at morning 4 o'clock, we give a command to the mind saying that wake me up at 4 o'clock, and we wake up. You know, that thing which works even when you are sleeping, the mind is active then also, although it is called subconscious mind. It is active then also, but it comes under, it also is a function of mind as per my understanding in Bhagavad Gita. So subconscious mind is just a term used where you can, used where it is used by the self for a constructive work even when you're not conscious. It is my understanding. Like extracting a pull of a word. Suppose you forget a word, you have to pull out a word, you struggle. That is using a subconscious mind, is what English people say, but actually it is the use of conscious mind itself.
Understand. Yes, thank you.
Nice. Any other questions for
Yeah,
Ashish?
just one comment on Ashish. I think Ashish, you said you picked on the word responsibility. I think that was a good insight. I think what I've also seen is not responsibility to articulate, responsibility to teach, but once you meet a guru, Sadguru, even the responsibility for your enlightenment he takes up. That's the beauty of it. So it's just not the learning part, teaching part, but even the outcome is with him. That's why if you look at the last teaching he gives is, surrender to me. I'll take care of everything else. That's again, it's a good insight. Actually, you picked on that word. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mukku. Over to you, Ajay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, coming up.
Okay. Has it come up?
Yeah, we can see your screen, but I think you're showing. Yeah, we can see your home screen now.
So I need to do.
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead.
Does it work? Can you see the slideshow now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys. Sorry, I'm the last, I think, of the summarizers, if you will. So I'm going to start with the usual protocols around thanking the gurus, Swami P, Swami SPG, Swami Anubhavanandaji. Everything that I'm going to say in the next 5 slides is going to be plagiarized. So anything that doesn't resonate with what the gurus have said is entirely my blame. I know the title of the chapter is Jnana Vijnana Yoga, but in some ways I looked at it as something which initiated me into the nature of God, which is Ishvara Swarupa. And there are a couple of definitions that I kind of put there. One is to say that Ishvara is the Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana, which is basically it's both the material and the intelligent cause of the creation. And then there was an interesting definition of what is Ishvara, and Ishvara is Samashta Ajnana Upahit Chaitanya, which is it's a summation of the eternal consciousness and the totality of Maya. So that is kind of in some ways the definition of Ishvara. So those 2 things I put it down there because that's something which made sort of sense to me. I picked up the first verse, and I'm not going to go verse by verse, just the first one. I think the 3 words, Maya Sattamana, Yogam Yunjam, and Madashraya, I found a uncanny sort of similarity, if you will, between Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga here, where if you just look at the highlighted part in purple or whatever color that is, at the end of the day, when we do Karma Yoga, our mind is focused on the ultimate goal. We've got to put in the diligent hard work to achieve that goal. And we've got to keep God on our side, right? That is at some level Karma Yoga in terms of the goal, the action, and the Ishvara Arpana Bhavana. And Bhakti Yoga in a way is also the same, where your mind is focused on God. You're kind of practicing it diligently. And of course, there is the element of surrender. So I thought that was, to me, it's a kind of a life lesson. It's something that really resonated. So I thought I'll put it down on the first slide itself. Moving forward, and sorry, this is just, I make a lot of notes for my own benefit, and in the interest of time and not wanting to put too much effort, I just cut paste it into a slide. And in some ways, this the four stages of bhakti, which is called Chaturvidha, in a way sort of encapsulates a lot of the concepts that are covered in chapter 7. And it's important to keep in mind that these are 4 stages and not 4 different people, if you know what I mean. So everyone goes through this journey, and these 4 stages actually come after you've kind of started to believe in Ishvara. So these are the stages of Sukriti as opposed to Dushkriti, which is a Nastika really. And you're essentially at that stage an Asura because you're reveling in your senses all the time. I think the other interesting thought or comment that I read was that bhakti is at some level almost like a 5th Purushartha besides the 4, which is Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, because that bhakti and Shraddha is essential at all stages of your spiritual journey. So if you look at these 4 stages, and I know there is sequencing, and there is the one which Spurti kind of spoke about from a Krishna perspective, a Gopi's perspective. I stayed with the more traditional sort of 4 stages and broken it out into just how does one move from left to right. And the first one is all about a post facto kind of belief in God. Something has gone wrong, God help me. The second one is more futuristic, to say, look, I recognize that there is God, and I'm saying that in future, please take care of my needs. And then you go through this cycle of being an artha or an artharthi, and you get to a point where you say, well, this is kind of all temporary, it comes and goes. And that's when you get this jigyasa and saying, who is God? I want to know the nature of God, right? And the final stage of a jnani is freedom, and the freedom is from samsara, right? So that's kind of the simple construct. The goal for an artha is basically dukkha nivriti. It's a temporary kind of thing. I have a problem, I want to solve. Whereas for artharthi, he's looking at for a slightly more permanent solution, but not the permanent solution. For a jigyasu, it is about gaining knowledge of God, and the jnani's goal is, as a jnani, your goal is to realize God, which is self-realization. The first 2 steps here are of the nature of sakama. It is for a need. This is what is referred to as manda bhaktas, because it is conditional, and it is prayers in the sense that you're looking outwards into the material world. Whereas when you move to the right as a jigyasu, it is moving towards nishkama, and it is shreyas. It is looking inwards or looking within. And so therefore you move from being a manda bhakta to a madhyama bhakta. And a jnani is obviously nishkama, unconditional, and that is the highest form of bhakti. In the first 2 steps, you're essentially doing karma, just karma, no karma yoga. As you move towards being a jigyasu, there is an element of karma yoga, which is a combination of swadhyaya, tapas, and prapadyanti. And then the other sort of things come along, which is sadhana chatushtayam, working with a guru and practicing jnana yoga. And as a jnani, you are basically continuing to be your true self. The next one is interesting. I mean, in terms of what is the nature of God in each of these 3 stages. In the first 2 stages, where I think is almost similar, you're looking at like a personal God. There is a God who sits somewhere in Kailasha or Vaikuntha or wherever in the clouds. There is one God. It's Ekarupa, therefore. It is Saguna. It is somebody with attributes. And this is sort of a religious person, as I would call it, right? Who believes in a power which is bigger than who we are, and therefore we pray to the God for fulfilling our wishes, right? If you move toward Jigyasu, you basically look at God as both transcendental, which is beyond us, and immanent, as in right here and now. And so you get into the zone where you're looking at it as a Aneka Rupa Brahman, still Saguna, but that's where sort of the concept of the Vishwarupa comes in. So you're moving from being religious to be spiritually religious, if you will, focusing on the end, which is self-realization. And you are looking at God as not a wish fulfiller, but a well-wisher. And I'm going to talk about that in the next slide, so I'll kind of not talk about it here. And I think the last one is around, as a Jnani, you basically move from being, and we've had a lot of discussion around, Jnanam and Vijnanam, but essentially, if you look at it, the sum of it, it's moving from Dvaita to Advaita, which is Jnana to Vijnana, and you move to what's really a Rupa Brahman, which is without any form. So if you look at the transition, it is from Eka Rupa to Aneka Rupa to Arupa Brahman, and that is the Nirguna attribute-less form of Brahman, and that's kind of where sort of you look at it spiritually, where God only is, as Swami Vivekananda famous quote is, and in Shloka 19 says Vasudeva Sarvamiti. So that's kind of the form that you're in. And then in terms of the nature of universe, I think this is well understood. I think the first two stages, when you look outwards, you look at it, you're focused on the apara, which is the empirical lower knowledge. And as you move to the right, you are focused on the para prakriti, which includes the transcendental higher knowledge. But I think the last point I wanted to make before I leave this slide is that if you go from left to right, there is a fundamental change in the person's approach towards who am I, and that is the ego. When you're artha, you've got a huge fat ego. When you become artha, you kind of say, look, yeah, there's somebody bigger than me. I need to kind of keep that person on my side. So my ego has come down a little bit, but not by a whole lot. And by the time you get to the other end, which is as a jnani, you've essentially dropped your ahankara, right? And the example that I read somewhere, which is really around the fact that it is not very complicated. It's almost like we're all intelligent folks, but we're drunk with this kind of maya that keeps us within samsara, right? Easier said than done, of course, but at the end of the day, if you move from left to right, it's really what you're losing is, trying to lose is the ego. Okay, so this Shloka 19 really caught my attention, and I did some reading here and there, and including SPG has some thoughts on this. But there is a interesting sort of hierarchy of when we say Vasudeva or Nirguna Brahman being the highest, and Vasudeva essentially means Sat and Chit. Vasu is Sat and Deva is Chit. But if you look at that hierarchy, it's like the next one is an avatara who is like a Krishna who comes to reestablish dharma on in the universe, and that's kind of exemplified by the Saguna Krishna Arjuna Samvada in the Gita. Then you have the Guru, which is really the teachings, lessons by them. I mean, they are Mahatmas. They are people who are enlightened or on the path to enlightenment, and getting there, as the heading says, it's durlabha, it's difficult, and that's kind of what is being done through the Guru Shishya Parampara. And then you've got the lesser sort of orders, which is around Agya, which is the do's and don'ts, like the yamas and niyamas. And then you've got a sort of a lot of stories around devtas and rishis giving vardans and curses and all that stuff. So just in hierarchy of various spiritual sort of actions, and how Vasudeva Sarvam is right on the top. There's one thing which I was trying to understand a little more about the Saguna and the Nirguna sort of aspect of Ishvara. And the Saguna is somebody who is essentially an extension of the Nirguna and derives all the powers from the ultimate consciousness. But the problem with that is that you kind of go into the Karma Kanda zone, which is rituals which are complicated and need to be followed to the T. The results are finite, it is transactional, as we saw in the case of Artha and Artharthis. And you can get what you want, but that may not be always in your best interest, right? And it is transactional. It does create attachment. It has an element of, or it has a selfish, element to it. But if you move to the right, which is the solution, you are looking at Nirguna as not somebody who's fulfilling your wishes, but somebody who's your well-wisher. And let me take a minute to explain what I mean by well-wisher. When you are a wish fulfiller, you either give it or you don't give it. So it's either a yes or a no. Whereas when you are a well-wisher, there are two more aspects. There could be a yes and a no, of course, but there might be a wait where you might give that at the right time. Or you could also have a situation where, you give them something which they really need as opposed to what they're asking for, right? And there's an example around the ice cream vendor. If you wish to get an ice cream, the vendor can give you the ice cream, but the mother will be able to kind of discern and say, this is not the right time to eat the ice cream. It's too cold. Eat it at the right time. So take it, but take it later, right? So there is no pratyavaya dosha in case of Nirguna Ishvara, as opposed to Saguna, which is very transactional, and you're looking for kind of instant sort of gratification. And so that's what. So having said that, there is the whole concept of the Ishta, and Ishta is ultimately the manifest form of Nirguna Brahman, and therefore is Saguna Brahman. But the way I understand it is that it is a journey, and you've got to start with Saguna Brahman, eventually graduate to Nirguna Brahman. Ultimately, they're the same at a certain level. What matters really is the attitude, which is, your prayer has to be nishkama. You've got to have the faith and the shraddha, and the prapadyanti, which is surrender to the ultimate Lord. I'm not going to dwell on this. I've sort of spent a lot of my time sort of trying to figure this out. I really like how Shruti summarized this whole debate between Jnana and Vijnana. And, I'm personally kind of more closer to the view of Sri Ramakrishna, where he looks at both Jnani and Vijnana as realization and intimate sort of realization with God. I just focus on at the bottom where it says that Vijnana is the wisdom that arises from the practical application of Jnana. And what Vivekananda says, you move from a stage where you say everything is God to God only is, right? And that is I think a big leap, which we can only sort of theorize right now. But I think that is a fundamental difference between going from Brahman is nothing or everything to Brahman is the only thing, God only is. So to me, in my head, that is Vijnana. I'll end with this last thing, and I've spent some time just thinking about this phrase, Ishvara Arpana Bhavana. And what I'm going to focus on is this word Bhavana. What is Bhavana? And again, this is all stuff that I've picked up from the internet and listening to, I think SPG had one comment on this as well. And Abhinava Gupta, who's the person who's kind of advocated the Kashmiri Shaivism, right? He has a beautiful sort of description, and something that Carl Jung has sort of paraphrased in a different sort of way. But there's a whole set of concept of difference between bhavana and kalpana. Bhavana is not like a random fancy imagination, which is kalpana. Kalpana is anything, you can imagine anything. But Abhinav Gupta says bhavana is using the power of imagination to grasp something which is already an existing reality, which you are not or unable to see for the moment, but there are people who've seen it, right? So it is not like just anything, it's not like a cartoon character or something that you're imagining out of your sort of mind. It is something which exists, but you're trying to grasp that thing, which you may or may not understand today, but you will at some point. So when you practice that, one realizes that what has been taken as the truth is indeed the truth. So it's not wild, random imagination. So I think that's an important thing in my head to say that when I'm sort of believing in something, I'm believing in something which is not random, but something which is a reality. It's just that I don't have the ability to absorb and understand it. And what you see on the right is what Jung said, which is the indwelling God image, which I assume is Saguna Brahman. Within everyone is mostly an unconscious nature of God image, which directs the life until it is made or becomes conscious, which is the Nirguna Brahman. So very similar thoughts, but to me, I think it certainly kind of gave me a better sort of understanding of this word bhavana, which I think is at the core of a lot of the Vedantic thinking. I'm going to stop there.
Excellent, Ajay. Thank you so much.
Hey, brilliant, yeah.
Any questions?
Very
from
nice. Please share the
Thanks,
presentation. I think Chatur with the slide was excellent, and so was the others. But really took a lot of learnings from that. Thank you.
No, thanks, guys. I'll circulate the presentation. I mean, yeah, I just didn't want to go slide by shloka by shloka. I just made a very simple summary.
It's very good, very good. All right. If there are no questions, I'm just going to stop the recording and then restart while Subbu, you get ready.